Today's lesson is on 2.1 transformations of quadratic functions. I'm so sorry I can't be here today. My son is sick, so I have to be home and watching him. So let's dive right in. We're going to be doing very similar things to chapter 1 when we did transformations of absolute functions. So the first thing you need to know is what the parent function is of a quadratic function, which is y equals x squared. And that's graphed in the shape of a parabola. It's not parabola, parabola. And it's a u-shaped function. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So we know that, let's start with like 0. So 0 squared is 0 times 0, which is 0. So I graph 0, 0. Hopefully that looks familiar, that our parent function has a 0, 0 always. And then if I do the same thing and I do 1 squared, that's 1 times 1, right? 2 squared equals 2 times 2. So that'll be 1 and 4. This one I want you to be really careful of. When we do -1, please make sure that you replace the x with parentheses and whatever your x is. So we're going to go -1 times -1, which is +1. And if I have -2 in parentheses squared, that's -2 times -2, which is +4. And so when I graph this, I have -2, +4, -1, +1, +1, 1, 1, and +2, +4. And so take a moment and make sure that your u is not a v and that it's curved. Okay, well, sorry about that. Okay, so this is called a parabola shape. The vertex of a parabola, on a parabola that opens up, like we see here, the vertex is the minimum or the lowest point. Okay. If it opens down, that means we're going to reflect it upside down, and the vertex is the maximum point, which is also the highest. Oops, sorry about that. And a quadratic equation in vertex form is y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. And this should look really familiar because this is exactly the same as the form that we used for absolute value. But the only difference is instead of the absolute value lines, so in chapter 1 we did y equals a absolute value x minus h absolute value plus k. Right? So instead of using absolute value for the grouping symbol, we're using parentheses with a squared. The squared is not a transformation. The squared is part of the parent function, and that means that we have a parabola shape. And if you remember correctly, h and k was the vertex, where h is always the opposite sign of what you see. So let's take a moment and hopefully the sub has given you the white paper, this yellow half sheet or bright orange half sheet, and your homework will be on a bright yellow color, same as usual. Okay. So let's take a moment. Whenever you see the words describe or identify the transformations, what I'm asking for on a test are these words over here. Okay, so like notice it says description of transformation, write this on test. So please make sure this is what you are looking at. So I'm going to move this up because it says to describe the transformations represented by g, given this as my parent function, and then graph the function. So a lot of you guys on the test were asking me where the parent function is, and I can't tell you that, but I want you guys to start practicing that, to hopefully remember that the parent function is always at 0, 0, and 1, 1. And then you have to remember the shape, and this time it's a parabola. Okay, so our original slope is up 1 over 1. Okay, so this is my parent. And now we're going to go through and identify our transformations in order. So if there's a 3 that we're multiplying, okay, multiplication is vertical and horizontal stretches. Anytime we're translating, that's an addition or subtraction. And reflection over y-axis or x-axis is multiply by a negative. Not a negative number, but just a negative, okay, which includes negative numbers. So if there's a number in front that we're multiplying by, that's a vertical stretch of 2 here, which means this must be a vertical stretch of 3. So that's number 1. Here's the second one. Okay, if we're adding or subtracting by a number, so we're going to go and look and notice that it's not in the parentheses with x, so it must be a y adding or subtracting. That means we're translating down for y. So translation down 5. Okay, and I'll write negative 5. So that means if I started at 0, 0, instead of starting at 0, 0, right, we're going to start at the vertex, which is your translations. So just keep in mind, translations are your vertex, and vertical stretches and shrinks are your slopes. So you have to go backwards now. So if I started at 0, 0, but I went down 5, that means my new vertex is at 0, negative 5. And so we're going to start here, and then I have a vertical stretch of 3. So my first slope is 3 over 1. Now, please make sure you don't continue up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1 all the way through. Okay, so you notice hopefully here that it's starting to change. So the first slope is up 1 over 1, but the next slope is not anymore. So we are only going to use the first slope when we graph, and you just need to make sure that it's as U-shaped as you can. Okay, as long as you don't draw me like a straight line, I can tell that that's a parabola. So let's do a next one together. This was one that got a lot of you guys on the test. So I want you to keep in mind that this negative is your first reflection. That's our second. There's a third one here, and then there's a fourth one here. Okay, so the negative 4 is not together. We are flipping first, then stretching, and then translating. So if you look at your paper, okay, you'll notice that the question is outside parentheses or inside parentheses, and if it's outside, it's reflecting over the x-axis. Because we're flipping up and down, right, in the y direction, because it's outside. And then, since this is not with x, that's also y, so it's a vertical stretch of 4. Okay. And then this, we're taking x and we're adding or subtracting a number, so it has to be a translation. And since it's in the x direction, we know that it's going to be left or right, but this switches to a positive 1. So this will be a translation. 3 and 4 can go together. Translation, let's see, plus 1 right and plus 2 up. Okay. So in the x directions is left and right. Outside with not the x is the y, up and down. So if I'm going, instead of 0, 0, I'm starting right 1 up 2, that means my vertex is 1, 2, right? Which is right here if you go in order. Switch a sign, there's my 2. Okay, my first slope is my multiplier, or my a value. Okay, so that's going to be negative 4 over 1. So I'm going to go down 4 and down 4 to the right and to the left. And then you can draw your, oops, I missed my point, it's okay. Draw your U-shaped parabola. So I actually want you to stop the video here and try these two on your own. Okay, so it's really dangerous watching a video because I'm going to show you the answer. I know it's faster to copy me, but I need you guys to try this on your own so that you actually can check to see if you understand it or not. Okay, so I'm going to pause my video and then you're going to pause yours, and then I'll show you the answer in just a moment. Okay, so when you're ready, keep going, check this video. It's negative 1 is your reflection, and hopefully you know that there's a negative invisible 1. So here for my first slope, a equals -1, right? Because there's an invisible 1 there. Please make sure you switch your signs from a +3 to a -3, so it's left. And here, make sure you change a +1 to a negative, so it's left. Okay, so it's the slope is -2, because a is equal to -2. So please take a moment here if you need to, review things, fix things if you need. Please make sure you understand where it's coming from, and maybe if you made a mistake, put a star next to it so that you know, like, I made a mistake one time, I might make another. We have 2 more examples and then 2 U-tries, and then we're done. So now let's talk about transforming equations. And this was another tough one for a lot of you guys on the practice test and the test. So let's review again, and luckily you have another chance in chapter 2. So use the general rules when you're writing equations. Okay, so if you take a look here, here are my general rules. And if you use those, I'll put them right here on the side, then that will help you with each step, and to make sure to write out a new equation for each new transformation given. Okay. Translations don't have to be separated. Translations can be written as one transformation or one new equation. So let's take a look. It says to write a rule or function describing the transformations of the graph of f. And a rule function is the same as an equation, guys. Okay? There was a lot of confusion about this on the test. Like, what is Ms. J asking me for? If I say to write a rule, then you are going to write a new equation. So we're going to take x squared and translate it 4 units down and 7 units left. So I've written it out. Okay, I wrote 7 left and 4 down because we go from left to right, right? And then, x's first, then y's. And then vertically stretches by a factor of 5, and then a reflection over the x-axis. On the test, this table will not be there, okay? So it'll just be like a blank space, and you'll see that on your homework. I'm just helping you figure out what to do and how to organize it. So if we're translating 7 left, that's this one, okay? So I know that instead of -7, it's going to change to a +7. And then 4 down is this one here. So that's my general rule. Okay, so notice, like, this could be quadratic, it could be absolute value, but we're going to have a +7 inside and a -4 outside. So now over here, I'm going to take x squared, and I'm just going to have the squared outside, so we're going to have x plus 7 minus 4. Okay. When we do vertical stretches, it looks like this, but a is the number we're changing, right? And we have a vertical stretch of 5, so we're going to do 5 times whatever that is, if that makes sense, right? So basically f of x, this part in blue, is what I already have. And then what I'm going to do is take it and multiply it by 5. Now, here's the important part, guys. I'm going to add this. Ready? If I'm going to take this whole thing and multiply it by 5, there's going to be a 5 in front, which is what everyone catches. But this doesn't change because I'm not moving left and right. I'm moving vertically. I have to also stretch this -4 by 5 as well. So it becomes -20. Okay, so anytime you have an extra number outside and you're multiplying outside, you also have to multiply the other number outside as well. Okay, so this next one, reflect over x-axis. This is very similar, right? So if you guys take a look, I'm going to take this whole thing, and yes, a lot of students want to just throw the negative in front. Okay, and there is going to be an extra negative in front. But if I reflected, then this negative that was underneath the x-axis is now going to reflect above the x-axis. Okay, so just make sure that you're aware that these numbers have changed. I'll bold them for you so you see. Okay? So this was a new one, and this was a new one. And so that's our final equation. And the thing you need to add to it is that it equals to g of x. Okay, because it says here, write a function g. So let's do another one because there are other transformations. We're going to do a horizontal shrink of 1/3, reflect over the y-axis, translate 4 right and 2 down. And we know that 4 right is plus 4 right now, so it's going to change to -4. Right? Like this -7 changed to a +7. Okay, horizontal shrink is inside, and that's also the pain in the butt one, right? So these ones right here have new changes, and there's a reciprocal. So if it's a shrink of 1/2, when I see it in my equation, it's going to change to 2, so this is going to change to 3 in our equation. So let's write our general rule. We have b of x, this one, f of b of x. So we're going to do f of 3x. Reflecting over the y-axis is right here. Okay, so I'll have f of -x. And then our last one, translation 4 right, 2 down, I'm going to have f of x minus 4 and -2 on the outside. Oh, dang it, and I switched the colors. I'm really sorry about that. So let's see if I can organize this a little better. So this is what we have right now. Okay, so let's write that out. And what does f of 3 of x mean? Like if it was f of 3, we know that we would take this x and replace it with 3, right? So right now, what we're going to do is take that x right there and replace it with 3x. And then I'll have squared plus 5. Notice nothing else changes. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing here. And so right now I have 3 already. And then we're going to replace -x instead of +x. Okay, that looks really messy. Maybe we can make a quick change and simplify inside so that we get -3x squared plus 5. Okay, so what are we going to do now? We're going to do the same thing, right? So if we are going to take x here and replace it with whatever's inside the parentheses, then I will have -3, but instead of x, I'm going to replace it with x minus 4 squared. And then I'm going to have plus 5, but I'm going to add -2 to it. Okay, and here's where I have to do a little bit more work before I can write my final equation. And I'm sorry I didn't give you more space, but your final answer will be g of x equals, and I'm okay with you leaving it as like a number and then parentheses. Okay, make sure you close your second parentheses. So there's 1 around the x minus 4, and then there's an extra 1 between the x squared. And then positive 5 and -2, we're going to combine like terms. Because if I was up 5 originally and I went down 2, I'm going to be at positive 3. And this is our final answer. Okay. So I do want you to pause again right here and at least fill out as much as you can of number 3 and number 4, right? So like I want you to fill in the transformations. If you can write the general rule, great. If you can't, fill in what you can. And then unpause the video to fill in what you can of the next one. I'll do 3 first, show it to you, give you an explanation, and then I'll let you try number 4, pause the video, and do it again. So I'll only do 3 right here. Numbers put in, please make sure that 5 right that's positive turns to a negative. And then let's start writing. So we know that we're going to replace the x with let's see, the x stays, but now there'll be a -5 and a +3 on it. Okay. And then I'm going to have an extra negative in front. The x minus 5 doesn't change, right, because it's inside, and my negative is outside, so it's only changing outside. But then this +3 has to become a -3, because it flips over the x-axis. And then my horizontal shrink doesn't affect outside, but instead of x here, I'm going to put 5x. Okay, and that's our final answer. So I'm going to add in g of x equals. Now, do keep in mind that this 5 is not part of the vertex anymore because there's an extra number, right? It's only part of the vertex if it's like x plus 5 or x minus 5, like that, with no number in front. Okay, we'll talk about that next time. But right now, that's all you need. Take a moment, try number 4, fill in as much as you can. Okay, so let's go over our last problem if you're ready. Now be careful, this one I didn't fill in, but we are going to start at x minus 3 squared plus 5. Okay. So that means when I stretch by 5, I'm not going to just start with x squared, I'm going to take this whole thing and stretch by 5. So it'll be an extra 5 on the outside in front. X minus 3 left and right doesn't change, but this positive 5 becomes 25, right? Because I'm multiplying by 5 here and 5 here. Okay, and then I'm going to add 12 inside. So this, I'm going to give myself space because I'm going to combine like terms. And instead of x, I'm going to replace that with x plus 12, right? And then there's still a minus 3. So do you guys see how now this is really clear that we're going to combine like terms here? This is what we had originally, and instead of x, I'm replacing that with x plus 12. There was a 25 to start, right, from right there, and then I'm going to add minus 6. So I'll write it underneath here. My next step that I now have is x plus 9 squared plus 19. And now I can reflect inside. And the only thing that changes is that x. So I'm going to have g of x equals 5. And then instead of x, we'll have negative x plus 9 squared plus 19. That's my final answer. You are now ready to go grab your homework and get started. There are 8 problems. 8 problems? I think there are 8 problems, and your job is to try 4 of them, right? So you can try odds only if you would like, or try all of them. There are selected answers on the back.